Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar organized by JetBrains and GoLand. I'm Paul Everett, JetBrains Developer Advocate, and I'll be your host. The topic for today's webinar is Discover the New Productivity Features of GoLand 2020.3. Today, I'm with the GoLand team. Welcome, Florin and Kate. Thanks for letting me head over to GoLand and hang out with you. Can each of you give a little bit of an introduction?
Hey everyone, I'm Florin, a developer advocate at JetBrains, and my focus is on all things Go related, so happy to be here.
Oh, you're muted. I think that was our fault. All right, we'll come back to that. Kate, can you check and see if you're still muted?
Yep, I'm here.
All right. Can you repeat your intro? Hi, Kate. Welcome to the webinar. Here's an intro.
Yeah, I'm Ekaterina. I'm Kate, and I'm product marketing manager for GoLand at JetBrains. Nice to meet
great.
you.
This is going to be a fun webinar with the three of us hanging out, watching what Florin does. Florin, you and I talk about this a lot. The new release comes out. We get really excited at all the new things that we want to show, whether it's Go-specific features or improvements in the platform or web-related stuff, which I usually wind up covering. Give us a quick overview of some of the things that you're going to be showing today.
Oh, that's right, Paul. Yeah, so I can't imagine anything else more exciting than discovering what's new in each release that we have.
It's like Christmas 3 times a year, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. But for today, you only have like 49 new features and improvements that we'll cover. Yeah, only. They vary from Go support, web support, databases. We have a bunch of plugins too, like Markdown. So if you write Markdown, you know, those README files. Some Kubernetes if you are into DevOps or deploying your own applications there. We do have a spell checker, so you can write better English or your native language. We have quite a few languages covered there. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll briefly show Code With Me. It's our new collaborative editing service. It's now in EAP, in Early Access Program, and it allows you to work with others remotely without needing to share your screen or anything like that. So quite a range of features that we'll cover today.
Code With Me, sexiest thing in history, right?
Yeah.
All right.
We do
just so people know, if they see something that they like during this webinar, they can watch the recording, but what are some of the other places that they can look for new GoLand features?
Yeah, sure. You can always visit our website, JetBrains/GoLand, to have a look at the new features on the What's New page. And also, as well as you can complete What's New tutorial that we have inside IDE, so you can do it interactively. So it's great. And also, I would like to announce that we have opened our early access program for 2021.2 version, so you can try freshly baked features even without subscription.
Since we've got GoLand users and maybe some kind of GoLand maybes here watching today, I know the GoLand team's put a lot of thought into what you want to do for 2021. I'm lucky. I got to see the writing of that. Maybe you can share some of the areas, Kate, that you're really interested in and want to emphasize.
Yeah, of course. We are always to try to keep our eye on the ball and provide with support for the latest language features as soon as possible. So, this release is not an exception. So there will be a lot of new refactorings in this release and new features for the upcoming version of the language. Also, we will try to add more features for working with boilerplate code, as well as with code editing, code completion, navigation, and code formatting. So it will be our focus this release.
All right, great. This is going to be a lot of fun. Onward, let's get going. We'd like to make this webinar as conversational and live as possible. So if you have any questions or problems during the webinar, for example, Florin, I think you're going to encourage people to follow along. You're going to have a repo available. So if you have any problems during the webinar, feel free to ask them at any time during the presentation using the chat in YouTube. We'll have a few pauses during the webinar where Florin will answer your questions. Not too many pauses. Florin's got a lot to cover. Which is good because the GoLand team will be there in the YouTube chat answering some questions right there. Please don't wait for the end of the talk. Ask your questions as soon as you have them. Usually the most common question is this webinar being recorded? We are currently recording. The recording will be available in this YouTube channel basically immediately. I give my standard joke at every webinar. The first question will be, is this webinar being recorded? Because someone will join us 10 seconds from now. So yes, it is being recorded. And you know what? I make that joke and it's like 100% out of 30 webinars I've given, it happens every time. All right, so now that we're all set, let's begin. Florin, talk to us a little bit about what's new in GoLand 2020.3.
Sure, Paul. Thank you. So yeah, it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy right there you have for the recording. So let's see what happens this time around. Cool. So without wasting more time, what I have here on my screen is the new interface for the welcome screen. As you can see, we redesigned it a bit. This part with work, projects, talks, and so on, it's my doing. And I'll share more on how to do that in a future webinar. So yeah, don't worry about the organization for now. Just know that you can now easily search for projects. So for example, if I'm searching for what's new in GoLand, I can do it here. I have the buttons to say new project, open, and get from VCS as before. But there are some other things that you can quickly customize through the tabs on the left side. You have the plugins that you can quickly install from here this time around. And speaking of plugins, I'm running, let's say, the bare minimum of plugins that you'll see throughout the presentation. So the IDE will stick mostly to the basic functionality that it has out of the box. There are some other additions, such as the Code With Me that I want to show you towards the end, Kubernetes, Makefile support, and the Node.js parts. And that's about it. Kate mentioned something about the learning of GoLand. Well, you can click on Learn GoLand and you can start learning or go through all the lessons that we have here, which show you what's new features, basic editing stuff, refactorings, intentions, and so on and so forth. Or you can visit our resources here to get even more help. That being said, let's focus on some Go specific features first and jump into our project. You can see the Gopher progress bar is here to take our eyes from the various loading parts of the process. So this is like a cute animation. You can install it as a separate plugin. And what you see here is basically a repository for all the tips that I'm going to show you. Towards the end of this, we'll commit to GitHub and we'll share it with you so that you can practice them at home or at office and share it with people that you know. So don't worry about this. If you miss anything, you'll be able to reproduce it. It's breaking down on like a huge README file. And as you can see, we start with Go support, we'll go through Go debugger, testing, and so on and so forth. So let's start with our first feature, if you want, the Go 1.16 support, because Go 1.16 just reached the RC candidate state, and it's going to be out in a couple of weeks or so. What you see here now is the settings or preferences panel. And there are a few things that we can do. For example, if you go to the build tags and vendoring, you'll be able to see that we have new operating systems added as we go along with Go adding new operating systems or architectures. So I won't go through the list right now. I'm going to share this with you, as I said, and you can find more about the architectures that are supported in 1.16 in the Go 1.16 release notes. Let's jump to Zen mode because I'm particularly used to that mode of viewing everything. And that helps me with the real estate on the screen. The first tip that I actually want to show you is related to the new syntax for Go modules called retract. This allows you to basically say, I publish this version of a package, say 1.0 or 1.10 or 1.20, or anything between it. And I want to retract them. I want to take them away so that people are not using them by mistake because maybe there's some severe security issue in them. Right. So the IDE added support for that. You can now start typing, for example, retract, and then you'll see that we get, for example, version 1.1.4 that, or 14, that you can tell also the users to get retracted from the market. Or if it's outside of this interval, because it works not only with a single version, but with a closed interval as well, you can say something like this. So that's the very first feature that we get to see in the editor. Let's move forward. From the list here, I'm going to go in the order, but at some point we may jump around, so don't worry if you don't see like tip, I don't know, 7 shown up. We'll maybe go back to it later on. Debugger. The Go Debugger got quite a bit of attention in 2020.3, and we have some new and useful features, I believe. And I look forward to hear your feedback on them. One of the things that should get you excited is the ability to dump goroutines. And let's see what that means. Let's run this sample application in debugging. Now, everything looks fine, and it's going to start the debugger as you normally would. You can see the server here. It's running in the background. However, if I switch to the debugger console here, there's nothing running. So I don't have any breakpoints. Now, how can I tell what my application is doing? I can come on the left side of the debugging window and say dump goroutines. Basically click on this camera here. When I do that, what will happen is that the debugger will take a snapshot of all the goroutines that are running in my application at that point in time when I hit the dump goroutines button. And I can then start to evaluate them, look through them and search. Maybe, for example, I want to see where sleep is called, or let's say what this goroutine is doing here. I can see the stack and so on. Furthermore, I can click on the filter button here and narrow down to, let's say, sleep. So all the goroutines that are having the time sleep function will be filtered in. You can see that there's a 2 here. And for some of the other goroutines, there's a 7. That means that we are looking at several goroutines that are collapsed together in this view so that we can make more use of the screen space. And in total, there are 20 unique stacks. That means that there are 20 unique different goroutine stacks, but in total, we have 73 of them. That's why we have different numbers here. Now, you can also choose, let's say, to not merge them and display all of them because maybe you are interested in what happens under the hood there. Oh, and as you can see, I just stopped the debugger and everything is still working. So you can take a snapshot and evaluate it later. Maybe your application has a, let's say, a memory issue, some goroutine leaks. That's how you can find them, actually, a lot easier. Let's merge them again using this button here. You can also say, right-click on it and say, hide all the goroutines with the same stack because they are grouped together. Let's hide another one. Let's like this one. Hide goroutine. It also works on an individual goroutine. And I hope you can see this at the bottom of the screen. There will be a hidden and an 8 because we've just hidden 8 goroutines. And there you can see all the goroutines that we hid away earlier. You can also take multiple snapshots throughout the execution. So if you want to, let's say, compare different points in time of what happens, you can do that. For now, you have to do the comparison manually. So that's the first Go debugger feature that we have. Hopefully, you'll find it productive and find some bugs with it if you are hunting for them. The next one is related to a bit of a favorite feature of mine, if you want. It shows how to run a Go remote configuration. And what we have now is basically a bit more complicated. I'm not going to go through the whole process here. But what you can do is, let's say, you can compile this as you would a regular application. And this will give you a binary. What do we do with that? Well, we can go to the edit configurations. And let's create a new configuration from here. We'll choose the Go remote because that's the feature we want to show. And you can now see that there's a new option. On disconnect, what to do? Stop the remote delve process, leave it running, or ask. Now, you can choose to ask, which is the default, and this will allow you to control every time what happens when you're debugging. But let's say you can also stop the remote delve processing as well. And for now, let's take away just this line to see it in action. As we are using the Go 1.10 or newer, we can just take this part here, copy it in our clipboard, and let's open up the search everywhere command. And from here, what we can see is, well, let's open in terminal. Cool. So I'm in the correct directory now. I can say, okay, build this using the correct flags, right? Ooh, it seems that I probably should not escape these. Much better. See, live demos. Now, the other part that we'll have to copy paste from here, we need to take this whole line. So what this does for us is basically tell us what's the correct command for Delve to actually run as a remote server. Let's first get the name of our...
a little bit from the end of that cut and paste, if it matters.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I'll adjust it now.
Okay.
So the little bit that I missed is the Go binary that we need to run. So it's not going to always be the same. And in our case, that's why I needed to run the dir command in Windows to get the Go remote name, because I don't have a specific name for this. So let's specify the Go remote executable.
I think we also missing this little blue gopher below your IDE.
Yeah, so there's a blue gopher there hiding.
Actually, Florian, did you mention that you've got Presentation Assistant installed?
No, that's a very good point. So all the shortcuts that you're seeing here, like, for example, search everywhere being displayed, or the settings that I did earlier, and I'm trying to show you again, is part of the Presentation Assist plugin. And this will give you the rundown of shortcuts that I'm pressing as we move along. I'm going to use a combination of shortcuts and mouse clicks and so on to navigate around, just to make the presentation a bit easier. And also something for the Presentation Assist to keep in mind, this is the Windows and Linux shortcut, and we also display the Mac OS shortcut. So if you're using that, key map, you can use those. Cool. So let's get back on debugging, right? So I'm running this in a remote debug
from the channel.
Sure.
If you want to keep on going, when you get to a stopping point, though, we'll take some of the questions.
Yeah, let's stop after debugger.
Sure, cool.
And the last thing that I need to show you here is exactly this part, how we now run the unnamed debugging. We can take a snapshot again, and we can stop this. And when we stop, you'll get the prompt. Do you want to stop the remote delve? Yes, I do. And when you do that, let's jump quickly in the console. There you go, delve was terminated successfully. So it takes a bit more time to demo it, but I hope now you can understand. And you've seen some tips and tricks on how to run this. It works on a Docker container too. Just haven't ported the demo yet. Blame the blame the time on that. And finally, our last feature for the debugger. This one should be a quick one. Okay, so this went through, the debugger was fine, but let's say we have a bug. How do we handle this? Well, we can set the breakpoint, and we go through the debugger again. Normally, you can see this window here, right? And it contains a bunch of things, but let's say I probably want to evaluate my sum. Okay, or watch it. This is how you'd normally do it. My sum, and when I step in, well, my sum could not be evaluated because it's not there anymore. So how do we handle that? Let's run the debugger again. Now, it's here. We can delete it. And we can use some of the new feature that we have, which is actually fairly cool. You can right-click on this and say, add an inline watch. And this will allow you to display the value when you are in the correct context for it. But if you're not, you don't see it anymore. What's cool about it is that you maybe have seen that the value will be displayed here. Let's run again and break into the correct context here. So you can see the watch here. It's a bit different than the regular value. And you can also dismiss it from the inline hint. Also, for values, you can now basically click on them and inspect them, or add them as an inline watch straight from the tooltip, so you don't need to remember to right-click and so on. And that's about it. Like, you've made your debugging life easier without having to necessarily keep this window open, because you can watch inline everything that you need. And it also works on bigger structures and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm not going to show that part to you right now. Paul, let's maybe take some questions.
Sure, and I'm going to cheat, because before getting to what the audience wants to ask, we're going to talk about what I want to ask, because you're just sitting on top of one that I really enjoy doing in the PyCharm and WebStorm What's New. That setting kind of inline watches, you mentioned that it goes away. Instead of being broken as you go through different scopes, it disappears. Right. It also disappears if you delete the line of code, so you don't have to go back and do the gardening on your breakpoints that pile up over time in your project. And I guess to include Kate on this, it's kind of part of the product management vision across the whole company to kind of take some of our features that aren't so visible and kind of surface them into the UI a little bit. I don't know, Kate, if you're prepared to talk about that a little bit, about how we want to improve the discoverability of some of our features.
Yeah, of course, we are trying always to make our features visible and easy to use. And even for such release, for example, for a JSON feature, we have added all possible ways to use it. Right. So you can do it to convert JSON into your code for, I think, for even using free ways. So you can just copy paste. You can do it via Alt Enter, and you can do it via generate shortcuts. So yeah, we are constantly thinking about that. And for us, it's very important.
Right. And I always joke that I get paid to be an expert on our products. And each day I wake up thinking that I know 1% of the product, and during the day, it's going to improve 2%. And so having some of these be more visible is a great solution to that, because people will never know. Okay, so we've got a bunch of good questions, but the team is answering them. So I'll pick some of the ones that I think the two of you might want to talk about. Florin, this is cheating because we answered it already. Is the EAP supporting embed file features of Go 1.16?
The EAP, yes. I'm not really sure if we published it yet with support for that or not, but well,
so
I'm on too many versions.
Answer that it's coming this week.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's in the nightly. And if you use the JetBrains toolbox, you can install the nightly and be on the very cutting edge of what we are up to. And this is available throughout the EAP period. But what I'm showing right now, it's the stable version. It's 2020.3.2, the latest at the time of doing this webinar. Sure. So no.
All right. Then the next one is more for Kate. Again, I think I kind of know the answer to this, but you'll have a better answer. This is from Wilberforce. Are there GoLang features that will facilitate, well, GoLand, I think he means, are there GoLand features that will facilitate the usage of the IDE for devs just getting started with Go?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. And from my point of view, GoLang is the best place to start to learn language, because we have a lot of things inside, and IDE will suggest you how to handle some problems, how to behave with your code better. Yep. So it will be kind of your teacher. So yeah, I think it's the best choice for newcomers.
And take away some of the frustration that you would have with just the syntax. I think I agree with you on that. Now here's a question for the two of you. I wonder if you have a different opinion than me. There was a question about, should I buy the all products pack if I'm doing Java and Go, or should I just get IntelliJ Ultimate with the Go plugin? Do either of you have an answer on that? Florin, you want to go first?
Okay, so me going first. I guess it depends on what your needs are. If you want to dive, for example, into the C# or .NET world and get into Unreal editing, for example, game programming and so on, Rider is a very good IDE, but you don't get it included in IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. And for the price difference, I think it's cheaper for you to get the old product pack. I started from PHP Storm, for example, before joining JetBrains, then switched to IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate, and then ended up with all the IDEs, because one thing that you may also enjoy is the fact that GoLand, for example, while we offer the same functionality in IntelliJ IDEA from a Go interaction point of view, it has a tailored UI, so you don't have to bump into all the Java features that are built into IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. And I think it's the same for PyCharm too, correct me if I'm wrong. So I would...
yeah, let's go over to Kate's answer on this. Should they buy both, or should they get IntelliJ Ultimate?
I think it's a question to people who use multiple languages. For example, if you use Java, sometimes you use RubyMine, and sometimes you use GoLand. I think, sorry. So all product pack subscription is the way you can go. And also a good combination is IntelliJ IDEA plus Go plugin. So you can do everything in IntelliJ IDE and use GoLand on top of that. But if you use only Go for your workly or for your hobby projects, I think it's better to use just GoLand because it's more lightweight from my point of view.
Right. So my answer is the same as Kate's, which gives me a chance to remind people, if you're doing Go in a full stack project with a front end in JavaScript web and a back end in Go, GoLand bundles WebStorm. So you already have WebStorm. And
data
a lot of times people don't remember that.
Yeah, and you have access to data grip too, which gives you database support.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Paul, thank you very much for mentioning it.
Yeah, so that Florin's right. It's like all 3 tiers of a 3-tier stack, and I'll go ahead and say it. WebStorm kicks some serious butt. Florin, back to you.
Sure. So this next section, and I guess we can take questions after the Go inspections part, is actually something that beginners will, to the language itself, will also be happy to see, because it adds some of those convenience features that you'd expect. And we'll jump first to the testing part. So up until now, when we had, for example, table testing like this, you wouldn't be able to run subtests. So if you'd make a mistake in one of these tests and you're like, okay, I'm not really sure if I can evaluate this or not, you'd basically have to rerun all the test suite from here. Now, if the name of the test, so the thing that we have here, is simple enough, meaning it can be evaluated by the ID. It's a simple string, or it's a simple string concatenation, maybe a very simple printf statement. Remember, we evaluate all of this in the ID itself. We don't rely on Go for interpreting the syntax there. Then you can actually run directly a subtest from here. So for example, I can say, run me just this one. And now, instead of seeing all the list, I see all of that. Or I can choose to debug a single subtest, and that will allow me to focus on the thing specifically that fails. For example, this one. It also applies to benchmarking. So if you do table benchmarking, which is a bit more rare, but you can do that, that works too. Now, the next thing is support for Testify, which is one of our popular testing frameworks in Go, if you want. And what you can do from here is basically you have quite a bunch of new features, and I will try to go through them as quickly as possible. So let's say that I am typing something like run from here. And as you may know, we can select a bunch of things from the list, such as the suite.run. You can see that T was added automatically to this, because the ID is capable of understanding, okay, you don't need to repeat all of that. It's fine. Let's proceed and do what work we need to do with the test suite, not focus on redundant. And that's what GoLand on, I guess, all our IDs are about, saving you some of that time and allowing you to be in the flow, to focus on what's really important, not doing repetitive work. Now, I've shown you how to get completion for this one. Let's move on to the test scenario. And as you can see throughout the examples here, there are steps that you need to jump in order to get a certain order. Now, we can run the test suite as we did before. That is fine. And you can see these. But we can also choose to, for example, go to a subtest from the second test suite, and it will now run correctly because we added proper support for that. And similar to the table testing, we can also run just a part of a test. So if you want like a sub-test. So that makes testing a lot easier if you're using Testify. Back to our main repository here. What we also introduced for inspections is something that I'm really happy. And again, it's something that, especially for new users, it will be helpful. It happened to me quite a lot when I was learning the language and, well, forgetting to focus that, error f actually accepts a parameter. We had that for printline and, well, printf and from the FMT package. But now we extended support to other packages like the PKG errors, logras, or zap. So you can now get inspection warnings whenever a placeholder is missing from a formatting section. And let's add it quickly. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to invoke the alt enter, so the context action, and say add format. And by the way, you can filter in menus from the IDE. Hopefully that's going to keep your hands on the keyboard more. And let's say that I want to add the world string. And that's how you do it. Of course, it's still missing the other one, but I wanted to show you a nice quick tip about it. And the feature similarly works for logras and for zap, as I said earlier. So I'm not going to show that part. And a new one. So this one is actually a complicated one, and I think I made these mistakes plenty of times. Working with context in Go is really fun. It's useful. You can have cancellation contexts, and those can help you cancel operations across a wide range of, let's say, databases throughout their whole request, and so on and so forth. There's plenty to be said about context. But what happens if you're starting to use a context with cancel, like in this example, and you forget to call the cancel function? Well, a resource leak can happen, and those are not good, especially for long-running applications like web servers, which we usually write. So now GoLand is able to detect those, and it will tell you that you have a warning here and says the execution may end if with the if statement, but you're not really calling the cancel function on the other side of the if. So you're calling it here, but below there's nothing. And similarly, if you hover on this one, it's going to say to you the same thing, like, hey, you have a problem. Be aware of it. If I uncomment this one, perfect, or not so perfect. Let's jump to the error. Same error here. By the way, hit F2 whenever you have errors in your file. Go to the next closest one in terms of priority.
That's something that started to appear in 2020.2, right? And then in 2020.3, it got wired up for some more stuff that go to next error.
No, that was the... So, next highlighted error, I think it's pretty old. I'm not really sure.
With the panel that's up in the right corner, I mean.
Oh, right, yeah. So the panel. The panel actually provides you the current errors in a file.
Yep.
Correct. It's pretty cool if you are used to seeing all the errors in a place. I usually hide it away because I personally don't like to have a bunch of things on the screen. And Zen mode, as you can see.
Sure.
I actually use this mode. So it's not just during presentations. But yeah, back on track for this one. Again, the same problem. And, we could have been happy with this one and catch this during a review, but this one would have looked okay because it's like, okay, I'm doing a return here. I'm explicit about it. However, the IDE note is that, yeah, you're probably missing the cancel call here. And yeah, now we are properly canceling all the execution paths. Let's do some code editing and then maybe take some questions. This one is definitely going to help new starters with the language and even the more experienced people. I know it helps me a lot. The go time syntax, I don't know if you know this one, Paul, but the go time syntax is not very straightforward. You get some time to get used to. For example, we write a year like this, 2006, which may be obvious to some Go programmers out there, but I did not get used to it until now. So we added support for proper time values. And now you can actually use the YYY and so on and so forth. So If you want to format your code and like time values and so on, that's the way to do it. Oops, sorry. And it works in time parsing too. So let's say I want to parse seconds, I don't know, dash milliseconds. Forgot the name. You can actually tell the ID to, I don't know, give you a day, maybe. Full name, short name, zero padded, not zero padded, and so on. And it will convert it to the correct Go value.
And every one of those is saving you a trip to a web page to go look up the format string information.
If only I can show you my browser history to see how many times I went to the documentation for that one.
The most popular website on the internet is the formatting string page.
Yes. There's actually a dedicated website for that. So
of course there.
That bad.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, you got time for some questions?
Yeah, let's finish this section, please, quickly. And
Yep, sure.
I promise I'll get into questions because there are some exciting things. So one thing that I can't really show you properly, and you'll have to take my word on it, is the fact that the auto import suggestions and the completion suggestions for packages have been improved. So now you can type your code as you normally would, and GoLand will take into account the frequency and the presence in the Go mode file for certain packages. So as you've seen earlier with the errors package, if you have the PKG errors in your Go mode file, then it has a higher priority than the errors from standard library. So hopefully that should help you give a better experience when typing imports and so on. Let's go to the shadowing support, because this one is a problem that still bites me to the day, and it's a pain to work with in Go if you're not careful. What is shadowing? Basically, we declare a variable here, right, for a quick assignment. Let's call it A. Here, we reassign it, and it's highlighted by having an underscore. It's all good. It has the same type, it continues to be the same, and so on. But what happens in this for, where we change the scope of the variable? Well, from being an integer, or a number, better said, now our variable A is a string. So that could cause some problems if you assume later on that you're starting to type maybe A plus 1. Strings and integers don't really mix well together in Go. So to combat that, we now have an action too. Besides the different color of the variable, you can navigate to the shadow declaration, and it will show you, okay, this is the place where you originally declared the variable. This is the other place where you're using it. So pay attention to what you're doing and how you shadow your variables. The next thing that I want to show you is related to the Go generic support. It's in progress. The generics proposal it's on track to being adopted. It's in a state of it's accepted but not fully accepted yet, so to speak. There are still some experimentation and touching finishes to do before the main proposal goes into Go. It's expected to happen in Go 1.18, which is in about a year from now. But until then, the Go team released the specification, and we are able to parse most of the code. We actually parse all the code, but for example, some things like unresolved any, that's not yet fully working. There are things that we need to catch up on. However, it's not going to give you a syntax error when it sees the generic syntax with the square brackets. And if you want to give this a try, actually there's a link to a blog post that we wrote a while back describing the whole process and so on. So I'm not going to go through the whole blog post right now. Just know that it's there, and you can start prototyping, experimenting with generics in GoLand. Finally, there are a couple of, let's say, quality of life features. Whenever you start typing a function here, you get to now choose besides the, besides the method, you can now also choose to create a test if you're in a test file, or create a benchmark. And you can also implement an interface if you want to. So let's create a test, and bam, that's how you do it. You can also give your test some name. For example, I want to have a proper name, and if you hit completion, it will generate the proper test naming according to Go conventions and so on. I won't fill in the rest of the text. You'll have to do it on your own. And in the interest of time, I'm skipping the benchmark just to jump to the next part, which allows you to write something like this. Say you're in a benchmark and you're typing the for loop. Now, you don't need to type the for loop manually anymore. The IDE can suggest it for you, and you can use it. You can name your variable. I'm going to leave the default one because that's probably the most common one. And now your code works, and you can focus on writing your benchmark. I think that's about it for now. Paul, let's go to some questions.
The first one is, and we only have about 15 minutes left, so I'll keep it a little bit light on the questions. Does the debugger work with GKE via develop on K8?
That is a very good question. As long as you can, so the run configuration here that I've shown earlier, Go remote type. As long as you somehow can manage to get a port for Delve to listen, and maybe you tunnel into that cluster, or maybe you have some sort of port forwarding going on, or depends on your setup really, then yeah, it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. And the next one, just give a very quick answer on the next one. The inspection that gave a warning about context and cancel.
Yes.
Showed it in that file. Is that an inspection that can be run across the whole project to find any place that you're doing that?
Yes, you can use search everywhere, run inspection by name, and then you search for context cancel, and it's going to run in the scope that you have. So
somebody might push a change that makes that mistake. You didn't even make it, but you could find it by looking everywhere in your project.
Yes, yeah, you can run all the inspections that we have, or just a custom one, like I said. And if you commit from the IDE, you can also take the run inspections.
That's good. That's a good point.
Setting. It will inspect only the committed files, the ones that you are committing, but still good enough. Yeah, I would say.
Okay, back to you.
Cool. Right. So Go module support, the ever-growing Go module support, got a new feature. Let's actually see how this one looks, because it's about structure. So I have a list of vendor dependencies here. Now, if I look into the external list here of the list of external libraries, I probably should look for the better vendor. But there's no better vendor, there's only better time. Why is that? From this new release onward, we are actually hiding that part, because the vendor libraries already contain the external libraries, so there's no point in duplicating that information. And you can compare that to the original sample for this one, which is the printf, which would give you this view. So for now, we are hiding this. There's no need to duplicate it, as I said. Cool. Let's go back to the README file. Actually, let me close this one. See, a lot of mouse movements, and you get to see the shortcuts. One final thing that we did to Go modules, it's also related to vendoring and how the reference resolution works. And now it's properly, let's say, mirroring the Go behavior. So should work as expected from now. Let's go into the more general UI UX tips and tricks. There's a new welcome screen that you've all seen in the beginning of the presentation. Oh, this is a new one. I do have to drop out from, well, maybe I don't. Let's go with README first. Let's search for this README file and say, I want to see this one. If I type Shift Enter, I will open this one in a second tab Actually, let's exit the Zen mode a bit, I guess, to properly observe how this goes.
Sense outside of Zen mode, yeah.
Yeah. So you can do it in Zen mode, but like if you are not in Zen mode, then yeah. You can also move things around. So for example, let me say I want to move this one around. I maybe want to make a Go file display at the bottom. And as you noticed, I can also go back to having a single layout here. So all of these now just work with drag and drop and so on. So you don't need to worry about positioning and so on. Let's go quickly back to Zen mode because I like that one more. There's a new preview tab. So if we go to the project tool window here, we can say click on this wheel, enable preview, and this will create a preview tab for you. It's temporary, but if you click on another file, it's going to show the contents and so on until you edit it. If you don't edit it, it's temporary, as I said. And another thing that we added is the ability to sync with operating system for the theme that you're displaying. So, for example, let's say that we go to settings and preferences, appearance and behavior, and for the help me out on this one, Paul, because I always forget. It's this one.
Oh, yeah,
Sync with OS.
I'm the same thing.
So, yeah, so it's right here under appearance, and you click on the wheel and you can say what kind of theme do you want when the operating system is in light mode, IntelliJ or Windows 10, Darkula or high contrast when you're in dark mode. And the dark mode refers to how your operating system looks like. And I think this one works on Windows and it works really nicely on Mac from seeing your presentations using it. So you can turn it on from here. What other things? We have a new reader mode. I'm going to skip that one. You'll have to see it for yourself. Shift, search everywhere. You can now do math. So if I say 10 by 10, you get 100. That should be useful sometimes, I guess. And there's a new light edit mode. And I'll show that at the end. If you don't know what light edit mode is basically Notepad on the IntelliJ platform. Can't put it better myself. Let's jump to some of the web support because, as we said in the beginning, GoLand is not just Go support, it's web support too. For this, we have a bunch of new features, and actually the team from WebStorm was really happy to add some features from Tailwind. You need to search in the marketplace if you don't have already the Tailwind CSS and Vue plugins. So let me head over here to show you where you can find them. And you can say Tailwind. Now, I already have it installed, and this is the plugin that you're looking for. There are a few others written by the community. That's cool, but I'm demonstrating specifically this one. And the Vue plugin as well. So this one. I'm going to show you only the Tailwind part and leave the rest to you. What happens when you configure a project with Tailwind CSS? Well, you can start doing something like apply, and it will get recognized. And as you can see, we already have used quite a few of these. Let's say we go with background blue. And if I hover, it will also show me the generated class for this and how it's going to look like. And that is hopefully useful, especially if you have a larger project and so on.
If I can make a point on this, I'll make it quick so you can get back to you. If you're using web stuff in GoLand, the web stuff is symbols like your symbols in Go. It seems miraculous, but a CSS class is a symbol, and you can navigate to it, and you can refactor it, and you can do all those crazy things. So if you are doing it, start thinking of your web code as actual programming code.
Yeah, and our support
Sorry
for
for the
TypeScript
advertisement.
actually.
Back to you, Flora.
Yeah, no worries. Our support for TypeScript, for example, actually has quite some interesting new features. I'm only briefly touching them. The last thing that I wanted to show you is that this works in HTML too. So if I type something like HOBGBL, right? Nonsense. It got covered here too. And again, hover works too. So yeah, don't worry about not knowing what classes you're working on and so on. Let's go back to our README file here quickly. The Vue.js 3 support, in the interest of time, I'll skip because you can test it on your own. As I said, the TypeScript language server integration now got some improvements, and you've seen earlier the problems tool window. Now it supports displaying problems from that TypeScript language server. There's full support for PNPM. There's basic support for Webpack. What else can I show you quickly? I can show you... Oh, let's switch to data group, because data group is actually very, very cool too. So I'm showing you a Docker file right now because I want to run MongoDB on Docker. And fingers crossed right now, everything works in a demo, right? If I bring up the database panel, I can create a new data source from here. We support Couchbase, among other things, but we support MongoDB too. Let's connect to the MongoDB server on localhost using the GoLand username and the GoLand password. Oops, I told my password. So after testing the connection here, you may need to download the drivers. We can run this, and look, the Gopher running in the background says that, oh, okay, this is all starting and so on. I think my server may need to have the ports exposed. Yeah, see, it all works in demos. Let me quickly edit this one. Let's find some ports quickly. 27017. If there are any questions,
I'll talk a little bit about what this actually means. You can browse your databases and do all kinds of database stuff that he's going to talk about, but you can inject the language of your database into your strings in your Go code. And you can actually do refactoring of your like SQL table column names and things by right-clicking in your Go code. It's taking SQL, a string of SQL, and treating it as symbols rather than a string that the IDE can then do important things with. Florin, did I kill enough time?
Yeah, sadly the database gods demos.
That's right.
I don't know.
That's right.
So the part that I wanted to show you was actually the fact that we Gophers running. No, we support running SQL queries for MongoDB databases. So if you want to play with this on your own, and for example, you can take this one in the database, insert it, and then you can run select, and it's going to behave like a regular select query. And there are a few new extractors for this, or you can better edit a column by right-clicking on that. Sadly, demos, live demos. See, not recorded. Can't record that. There's the VCS support that we reworked, and there's a new staging area. It behaves as you are used to the, let's say, staging in Git. It actually uses that, but it also disables the change list, and it's only available in the new commit tool window. So if you're using the old dialog for that, that's not going to work. Make sure that you enable that. And the README file will contain all the directions needed to do that. We have a bunch of support for the Kubernetes plugin, for example. You can now download pod logs and open consoles, or run shell to connect to the cluster and run shell commands in your containers. If you can actually do that, then you bundle a shell in them. the Markdown plugin supports Mermaid, and I think maybe I can show this one as a demo instead of the other one that just failed. So it works like this right now. If I go in the list of Markdown here, see, I'm getting excited about all these things that we support. So planned UML was there already, enable Mermaid, and it will download the first time around. Let me refresh this, and bam, now you have a graph schema enabled. So if you're drawing graphs in your README files, then now you can visualize them. And finally, the last two things that I want to show you are the GoLand plugin. We improved quite a lot on it, and there's better English support and more languages. And Code with Me. And let me exit the Zen mode for this one. Code with Me. So I spoke a bit about it earlier. It's our collaborative service that allows you to basically come here and say, hey, Paul, let's work together on this demo, and enable access and get an invitation link. Not only that, you can control the connection settings. So for example, you can say, I want Paul to have read-only access because I don't trust him, but not to change everything from GoLand to PyCharm. Edit files, full access, or custom. And for custom, you can set different permission details, like maybe Paul has access to view only, or has access to terminal, or full access, or nothing. Also run access. Maybe Paul can run things using run configurations or not, or I can hide things from him. So for example, I can hide the .idea folder so that my passwords for the database earlier don't get shared by mistake. And you can also do a automatic voice call, and it will actually be all inside the IDE. You can say enable access. You'll get a link for that. If I would paste it to Paul right now, he would be able to join, and we would be able to turn this into a voice call or not. It supports up to 20 people. It's in early access, meaning that there may still be some hiccups. If there are, please let us know. We'd love to improve them. And it's subject to change. So yeah, please give us feedback. I know the team is really looking for your feedback to make it better. And that's about it.
I used it for kind of a code review last week of the major secret project that he's working on. And we went, I think, an hour and a half in a voice video screen share code IDE sharing session, and it made it all the way to the end with no hiccups.
Oh yeah. And best of all, we actually run our stand-ups using it. So
that's right. So
I love
raise
that
your
part.
hand if you've ever been in a Google Meet that went an hour and a half without a hiccup. No hands were raised. Okay, made my point. Hey, Florin, you wrapped up on what you're showing? That
would be it. Right. Sorry for the demo not working for the database. I promise I'll make up next time in the next webinar.
No problem. No problem. We've got two things. Well, we'll say one thing to bring up. In Go code editing, is the only for loop only? Let me see. Oh, another question. Or can you suggest another loop method or another method like if, etc.? So I'm not exactly sure if I've got this statement right.
No, so this one applies at the moment only for specifically for benchmarks. Mm-hmm. So the for loop that you have to write for the benchmarks, this one, for gets pretty boring at some point to write manually. And that's why we added. If you know other similarly boring loops or if statements or anything like that to do, please let us know, with a distinction on the errors. Because if you have something like this, you can always do error not nil. And that's postfix completion at work. Let me type it again slower. Error dot not nil. Enter.
Got it.
There's a bunch of others too. Explore the postfix completion or join
the feature webinar. I know I should be using all the time, but don't.
Oh, use it all the time.
Do you really? All right, I've got to learn from you. We'll go ahead and start the process of wrapping up on this. Everyone in the channel, let us know either in the channel or follow up with Kate about whether you like this format. We'll go ahead and switch back to my screen and get us out of here.
Sure.
All right. This is a lot of fun. Thanks, Florin, for taking the time to talk with us about what's new in GoLand 2020.3. Next time, we'll give you like 3 hours because there's so much to show. The GoLand team, stop creating so much good stuff and we wouldn't have to go on for 3 hours on these webinars. If any of you have any questions later, don't hesitate to reach out to the GoLand team by email or social media. Kate, what's your preferred way for people to reach you?
I think Twitter is our way to communicate.
Okay.
We like to chat with people on Twitter, and we do usually it quite quickly. So please welcome to our Twitter.
But don't do it as a DM. Do it as a regular tweet so that everyone can see the discussion. If you'd like to get more information on GoLand, please go to our website at jetbrains.com/go. We'd love your feedback on this webinar, especially. We're experimenting with this format. Let us know if it worked okay for you. You can also give us feedback with the after webinar survey, or as Kate said, in Twitter, so we can have a discussion about it. The recording will be made available on our YouTube channel soon. If you haven't already, check out the GoLand blog, where you can find up-to-date news about releases and events. Like, this is EAP season, so there's going to be goodies coming out the door like multiple times per month. And for example, the recording for this webinar will be announced there in a few days. We'll also provide some additional links and information from the presentation. Florin, like your repo for this?
Oh,
we'll share that with people?
Yes, for sure. So actually, we can share it right now.
Okay. Well, but some people out there in the world that are doing the recording might want to see it in the blog post. So take a look at the blog to get more information about this webinar and the recording. And Kate, before we leave, in the intro, you talked a little bit about EAP. Kind of go over again what it means. What does it stand for? What does it mean? And what's available so far in 2021.1?
Yeah, sure. At JetBrains, we usually have early access program when anyone can try GoLand for free for 30 days and for 30 days for one build, of course. But usually early access program takes around, 2 or 3 months. So during these months, you can try GoLand with newly packed features. And but of course, it's all access program, and builds may have some bugs and glitches, but you can try some new stuff first. Yeah, and for this upcoming version, we are focusing on a new on supporting new features for Go 1.16. We're also focusing on new refactoring features, on new code editing features, and of course for code completion, and many new things on top for web development, for working with databases, and so on. So please stay tuned, visit our blog post, visit our Twitter, read our blog post, and
we're everywhere.
Yeah, and just try it. So yeah.
And one of the points is that you want people to try it and give feedback on these new things, right?
Yeah, of course, and it's very important for our team, and we are happy to listen from you, and we are happy to discuss it with you. So please don't hesitate to speak with us, to leave your comments in our blog, on Twitter, and everywhere you can do this. And of course, welcome to our bug tracker.
And on the bug tracker, each EAP announcement has a link to the release notes, and the release notes have a link to the ticket for each feature that's introduced, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you can even just go to Truth Release Notes, pick the ticket, and just write to us and discuss it with us. we try to answer very quickly. So
right, we have a great support staff.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right, that's all from us today. Thank you very much for joining us, and hope you have a nice day.